Hey everyone, and welcome to my 2-year ownership review of my 2021 Elantra N-Line. So I've owned this car for 51,000 miles, just under 2 years, as I bought it towards the end of April. I bought it for $23,000 at the time. Obviously, you really can't get one of these for that price nowadays. And no, I'm not bragging, I'm just telling you all about my ownership experience, as I went to go see what the possibilities of trading this in for, say, like a Kona N or an Elantra N. And they were offering me pretty close to $20,000, 2 years and 51,000 miles later. So I've been pretty happy with my ownership experience as far as the value that I could still get out of this car if I were to go that route. Obviously, in this video, we're going to cover my ownership experience over the last 2 years. We will talk about some things we've talked about in previous videos, but I'm just trying to cover all of my bases here for any new viewers to this video that'll obviously bring traffic to my channel. But enough sitting around, enough talking. Let's get to the driving portion of this video, because I know that's what everybody wants to see, right? So in case anyone here doesn't know, I'll talk about some of the basic features that are included in this car, but I won't go into everything because I have endless videos of this car, especially the early ones, talking about, everything that this car comes with and why it's a good deal. I will say that in this car we have Apple Wireless CarPlay and Android Auto. Any sort of Hyundai car that doesn't include navigation includes wireless CarPlay and wireless Android Auto, whereas the ones with navigation have wired Android Auto and wired Apple CarPlay. Just a little thing to note. This Elantra N-Line also has a wireless charger, which is covered up by my sunglasses because there's no sunglass holder in this car. This Elantra N-Line obviously features these cloth seats with leather sidings to them. The cloth inserts are quite comfortable. I will say that the seats hug you a little tight for someone who is my size at about 250 pounds. I'm a big boy, but these seats definitely do the job as far as holding you if you're doing any sort of sporty driving. Why is this person stopping? What? Well, if they were trying to get over, they didn't indicate so. I would have made space for them. That's sad. So let's bump this thing into sport mode. So these Continental all-season tires I bought can sometimes have a bit of a hard time picking up. I definitely like them better than my Hancooks that came with the car, the Hankook all-seasons. Just for, inclement weather driving, which we get a lot of in New England. But as far as performance, the Hancooks were definitely better. If I were to do this purchase all over again, as far as getting new tires at 50K miles, I would have definitely gone with a summer set and a winter set, but it's not the end of the world. So the 2021 Elantra N-Line is different from the one you'll get today if you're deciding to buy a new one. The key differences are the rear taillight and obviously the new digital dash for the 2023. The rear taillight, they deleted the LED one for the kind of normal red one, just to make money for the digital dash, to compensate for the switch out of that. And so obviously you get a nicer interior piece in the new 2023 Elantra N-Line, but I really think getting rid of that taillight was a mistake as far as the styling goes. So in this Elantra N-Line, while we're stuck behind traffic, we have dual climate control, we have heated seats, we have our nice little sunroof here. It doesn't buffet a whole lot, but definitely at some speeds you get some wind buffeting without the added windscreen that the panoramic sunroofs have. Obviously, as you guys know, we have drive modes. We have Sport, which I'm currently in. We have Smart, which as you drive, like, say, more aggressively, it'll put you into Sport mode. And say you are driving more conservatively, it'll actually put you into the car's only eco mode, and this is actually the only way to access that eco mode is through this setting. And so see here, it'll say Smart Eco, and then like say I floor it, it'll put it into normal, and then it'll all of a sudden, it'll go towards sport. I don't have enough room in front of me for it to switch, but and it'll generally stay in that mode whichever it put you in for as long as you're doing that type of driving. It's definitely hard to keep it in sport mode just because you kind of have to drive like a maniac. So if you want the sport mode, just put it in sport mode instead of playing around with smart. I don't tend to play around with smart a whole lot just because I don't like the variability. Like if I'm driving in normal, if I'm driving normally, I'll just put it in normal. If I'm driving in a sporty fashion, I'll put it into sport. But I mean, this car gets good enough fuel economy where you don't really have to worry about eco mode all that much. And so far as fuel economy, I average about 35.5 throughout my entire history of driving this car. I think it gauges your most recent 9,999 miles, and then takes those miles and takes the average, and then it resets every interval of that amount of miles. With that being said, I've averaged around 35 every single time. With the hand cooks that came with this car, I was definitely averaging closer to that 40 number on the highway. I just think those were better highway tires too. These ones tend to be a little bit more loud on the highway, but as far as like daily driving and inclement weather, they're definitely the better tire. My Continental DSW 06s compared to the Hankook Ventus S1s that came with the Elantra N-Line DCT. So now let's talk about the dual clutch transmission. So obviously this one's the 7-speed dual clutch. The Elantra N has the 8-speed. I actually just got out of a Kona N yesterday, and I will say that that dual clutch is far superior. I mean, if you're just going off of like transmissions, obviously that's, you know, that car is like another $10,000 to $12,000 depending on who and where you get it from. But that transmission is so snappy, it's so responsive, it's just quicker to shifts too. I will say that this Elantra N-Line transmission, the 7-speed, it's quite a bargain for, you know, $20-something thousand. But at the same time, I feel like over the course of 50,000 miles, it definitely has gotten less snappy and quick as it once was. Oh my gosh. And so although I feel like my transmission has definitely gotten less responsive and less snappy, and then occasionally, like especially when it's just warming up, you'll get kind of like these groggy shifts where the only way to describe it is by making weird noises, which would be like as you're shifting, it goes into the next gear. I wouldn't say that it's like slipping gears, but it definitely, especially when it's cold, it just, I don't know, for whatever reason it does that. But as far as any problems, I really haven't had any with this car. I've had 2 replacement horns, and that's about it. And then the rest of my service visits have been just for oil changes, you know, new air filters, all the recommended service. I just got done the carbon cleaning of, you know, inside. They go through the intake manifold and clean out your injectors, I believe. I mentioned it in my last video with more details. Right now I'm kind of blanking just because it's so early in the morning. But yeah, I've had any service done to this car that they've recommended. Not because I like getting screwed over at the dealership, because obviously, you know, things are expensive. But just because if I have any sort of problems, just with how much, you know, aggressive driving I do for these videos, if I have any sort of problems with this car, they can't really use that as an excuse not to claim it on my warranty, just because I've done all the services they've been recommended to me. including doing oil changes at a higher interval. Technically a lower interval. I do them every 3750 miles instead of the recommended 7500. So I'm getting double the amount of oil changes over the life of the car. Just because, you know, I drive it so aggressively, I just want to make sure that I always have clean oil in this car. And yes, you could say that some of the services and, you know, the amount of oil changes I'm getting might be unnecessary. But at the same time, you know, it's my car. I make my own decisions. There's people who neglect their cars, and I try to do the complete opposite. And yeah, it costs me more money over the course of the car, but it just gives me the peace of mind that I'm doing everything I can to protect my car from any sort of damage that I may cause it. So as far as interior space, I have quite a bit of room for my legs. They can spread out quite a bit too, especially on long road trips when you kind of get antsy. There's definitely enough room for me as the driver and my passenger. And I will say, compared to, say, like a WRX, which I've sat in the back of one now, this car definitely has about the same amount of space as that. So if you're going from a WRX to an Elantra N-Line, not that I think you should ever do that, but they have about the same amount of backroom space for comparison. Comparing this interior space to a Kona, whether you get the Kona N or you're getting the Kona N-Line or any sort of Kona, just imagine the Kona was like you took the Kona and stretched it out like this, so you get less headroom, but you get more room, you know, horizontally rather than vertically. And that's kind of what the Elantra is compared to the Kona, which is funny. And still, although I felt like this transmission has been less responsive, I will say that the paddles still work great. You know, I can downshift and it does it rather quickly, but compared to the N cars, it's not quite the same. It's probably double the time, even though if you were to just take those times, maybe it's 0.1 second for the Elantra N, whereas it's 0.2 seconds for this car. And those are numbers I'm just throwing out. I don't know the exact shift response times, and I'm not gonna try to time those either. So now that we've talked about a bit of the cost of ownership, we can talk about the ease of ownership too, which is something that kind of gets left on the back burner when people think about buying cars, but I think it should be talked about. So what I mean is, you know, how hands-off are you with the service, hands-off with maintaining the car, and just trying to make it so your ownership is just as easy as possible so that you can worry about other things going on in your life. So for instance, for my oil changes, for my maintenance I've done on this car, all of it, I've literally just called my dealership, scheduled a Saturday or two in advance, and then just drop my car off and not worry about it. And yes, I have the luxury of having, you know, a girlfriend who can drive me around, like when we're doing things together on a Saturday or Sunday. And if you don't have that luxury, maybe you do have to wait at the dealership. But things like oil changes and most regular maintenance, you maybe will be there for an hour, 2 hours. And maybe also if there's like a Starbucks or something local that you can just kind of go to and chill, that's always the best solution too. And yes, I totally could do my oil changes myself, but it might take me longer than if the techs do it. And even if my car has to sit and wait a little while, I doubt I could do an oil change as fast as those guys could. And frankly, I don't enjoy working on my car, so I'll just have someone else do it. And cost-wise, oil changes for my car are about $60, give or take. Now that I have had my free ones run up that were included in the 36,000 mile free maintenance, I've definitely had to pay up for those, but at the same time, you know, I had free ones for more than half the life of the car so far. So where does the Elantra N-Line compare to the performance and speed of, say, the Elantra N and the Kona N? As far as the mid-range power, not talking about handling, not talking about, you know, track driving, but just off the line, straight ahead power from, say, 20 to 40 miles an hour, 20 to 60 miles an hour. Obviously the Elantra N and the Kona N are quicker, but it's not that much quicker. I don't know the exact numbers, but feeling wise, which you're not sitting here timing your car every single time you're doing a launch or, you know, a pull from second gear. You're not timing it. You're just feeling the emotion. You're feeling the thrill of the acceleration. And with that being said, you won't get that much feeling different between your Elantra N-Line and, say, an Elantra N. Where the car definitely does better, the Elantra N, is off of the line. You know, that car has chassis reinforcement, it has better tires, it has a better transmission, it has more power, more torque. And off the line, although it still gets wheel hop, it's a lot quicker. So the Elantra N 0 to 60 is this compared to the Elantra N-Line's this. So you can see that's kind of where the difference lies. It's in that initial 0 to 20. So if you're in the market for a regular Elantra compared to the Elantra N-Line, you need to ask yourself a couple questions. Number one, do you need the added power? So the Elantra N-Line compared to the regular Elantras obviously has more power. The 1.6 liter turbo and 4-cylinder creates 201 horsepower compared to the Elantra, like the regular Elantras, which has, you know, a lower number. So I've been through 2 winters with this car now, and I will say that this car is decent in the snow as long as you have good all seasons or you have good snow tires. The tires really make the car, not the other way around. You know, it's just like if you were running sprints, you wouldn't do them in boots, right? So don't make your car wear sandals in the snow. Give your car good tires, and really the front wheel drive will handle the rest. If you start to lose traction in the snow, just wiggle your wheel, give it decent power without overloading it, and therefore you'll be able to drive through most storms. I wouldn't say all of them, just because of, you know, this car has a lack of ground clearance, and front wheel drive isn't all that great in the snow, but it's better than rear wheel drive. But I've been able to survive 2 New England winters with this car. I haven't had any issues going somewhere when I need to be somewhere, but obviously for most storms I've tried to just kind of stay home. I don't have a Subaru WRX, so it's not really fun for me to go out in the snow and do donuts in a parking lot, because I would have to do those in reverse. So as some of you might have seen my 0 to 60 video with this car, we got around 7 seconds in that video, which is pretty embarrassing for this car, because, you know, you want to be able to see your Elantra N-Line, you know, put up a decent number compared to some of its competitors, but at the end of the day, it gets too much wheel hop. You know, it doesn't have a limited slip diff, it doesn't have chassis reinforcement. You know, it might help even if you just get like some aftermarket engine mounts, and also better tires. You know, if I was on summer tires and it was warm here, it would definitely help. I'd say the lowest number you might get is 6 seconds, maybe 6.5. I wouldn't really expect anything lower than that without doing some serious modifications to these cars. But, you know, I'm really in the market for just keeping my car stock. Besides, obviously, I have, you know, I have decals over my badges that make them black, but that's really all I've done to this car, and that's all I plan to do to it, just because I plan on getting out of it at some point, and I want to not have to take things off or make things stock. I'd rather just keep it the same until I plan on owning a car for a long time, and that's kind of when I'll start to do some modifications that I'll definitely feature on this channel. But that being said, I have tons of Elantra N-Line videos, so please go and watch them. I talk more about, you know, my initial reactions and thoughts in my first couple videos, whether it be the first review of this car or even the 3-month of ownership video. And then as I get later into owning this car, I talk more about what has happened, what's transpired with owning the car, and more nuanced details about my ownership experience. But leave any comments below, any questions. Feel free to leave comments on this video or hit me up on Instagram at auto_Joe. I'm more than happy to answer any sort of questions regarding this car, and please don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe so I can make more videos rather than ones just on my own car. Please guys, thank you. See you again soon. Bye.